Prince Edward Island and the North Shore of Nova Scotia. Two incredible eastern coastlines, separated by the warm waters of the Northumberland Strait. From spectacular beaches to the region's signature red cliffs, the coastlines here have it all. The village of Pugwash and a Cold War call for peace that would change the course of history.
Pugwash is known as the birthplace of the anti-nuclear movement. I'm fond of telling people in many places Pugwash is more famous internationally than it is right here in Nova Scotia.
Confederation Bridge, one of the greatest engineering achievements of the 20th century.
The bridge is 13 kilometers long, one of the longest bridges in the world, and it replaces the ferry system.
And the future for a timeless agricultural symbol of Prince Edward Island.
Once we tell people where we're from, they say, oh, of course, you had to do potato vodka. PI is potato.
Now, we explore this rugged coastline like never before. A bird's eye view, unlocking the secrets of our maritime past, present, and future. This is Canada, Over the Edge. Traveling southwest along the shores of Cape Breton Island, the coastline is flanked by the world-famous Cabot Trail. It's a nearly 300-kilometer roadway connecting seaside villages, following the contours of this remote branch of the Appalachian mountain chain. These towering mountains mark a marine boundary as the Gulf of St. Lawrence becomes the sheltered, pristine Northumberland Strait. At Port Hawkesbury, Cape Breton Island meets the mainland, and the journey along Nova Scotia's incredible North Shore begins. From mountains to picturesque farmland, the landscape along the Northumberland Strait can evolve rapidly. More than 200 kilometers long, the strait was formed 13,000 years ago as retreating glaciers left deep valleys that would later be flooded by the sea. And the shallow waters along these sheltered bays and inlets create the warmest waters north of the Carolinas. It is a coastline enjoyed by tourists and residents alike. "100 kilometers from Port Hawkesbury, the town of New Glasgow appears on the horizon. This 18th century Scottish settlement is home to more than 30,000 people, one of the most populated regions of Nova Scotia. It is a pulp and paper town, with industry lining these scenic inland waterways. Continuing to the coast, high above the town of Pictou, with its replica ship Hector, an homage to Canada's first immigrant ship, which landed here in 1773. It is a coastline with an incredible and mysterious past. Not far away, a Cold War legacy is preserved, deep underground. Debert, Nova Scotia, is the site of one of North America's largest anti-nuclear shelters.
So we're in the map room, or what's called the damage assessment room of the former command center for what was referred to as regional headquarters of Atlantic Canada in the event of World War III. We're about 40 feet underground in what we've turned into our boardroom.
Built by the order of Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, these bunkers were designed to ensure the country could continue to be governed in the event of a nuclear attack. Now, decades later, developer Anton Self has taken over the facility, turning it into an incredible modern data storage facility.
You've come down the rabbit hole through that tunnel from the outside world into Wonderland. You've come into the metaverse. You're inside the machine that powers the internet. You are now physically in the net. I'm a compute farmer. I'm creating what's called Dataville. We are developing a compute farm, the kind of stuff, the infrastructure that powers everything that happens on the other side of your browser. It's wizards like me who deliver you applications such as online banking, airline ticket reservations, news, search, rich streaming media, watching movies, listening to music, etc. That's precisely what we're doing in this facility.
And it is one of this bunker's unique Cold War features that will give Self the edge against similar data facilities.
So each of these Diefen bunkers was sited in a place where there would be a vast underground groundwater resource that would be impervious to a nuclear fallout. And that was what attracted me to this site. It's a giant box atop a vast underground chilled groundwater resource, water that we could borrow to cool the significant load of thousands of CPUs in compute. Each server might run at the temperature of a toaster oven, and it requires a significant amount of air conditioning, which usually requires an equal, if not greater, amount of power to power. Our facility runs at 4% of the cooling load of the average compute farm or data center today. And I'm out to prove that this is the most energy efficient co-location data center facility on the planet Earth through an operating history that essentially takes advantage of what the Department of National Defense figured out 50 years ago. which is that there would be benefits to borrowing vast amounts of chilled groundwater, something that Canada has in abundance.
More than 100 kilometers from the entrance to the Northumberland Strait, our aerial survey over Nova Scotia's northern shore continues west. Now, beyond the towns of New Glasgow and Pictou, these scenic inland waterways lead back to the sea. Here, at the edge of Caribou Island, sits Caribou Lighthouse. Protecting vessels at sea from the shallow waters around Caribou Reef. A warning station has operated here since 1868. Today's lighthouse stands 44 feet above sea level, projecting a white light out to sea. It is a welcome sight to the fishing fleets that operate here. Searching for the lobster, crab, herring, and other species native to these waters. Just miles from Caribou Lighthouse, a real-life example of the dangers of these shallow waters. This log barge, the 100-meter Sous au Couchant, was traveling from Quebec when it was caught in one of the season's most vicious storms. Destined for the pulp mills of New Glasgow, the barge grounded here, just miles from its destination. Thousands of 2.5-meter-long logs were lost, now a navigational hazard on this busy waterway. Cleanup crews would respond immediately, but the effort would take weeks as heavy currents would carry the logs along 20 kilometers of coastline. Continuing west, civilization is left behind along the most remote stretches of Northumberland coast. 30 kilometers beyond Pictou, the village of River John lies below. Named for the nearby river which empties into the Northumberland Strait, the village is well known for the scenic mudflats that are revealed at low tide. From River John, the coastline shifts yet again. Coastal cliffs are replaced by grassy meadows stretching nearly into the sea. Next is the village of Pugwash, home to just under 1,000 people. The region is set on a salt deposit nearly 500 meters thick. Today, the village's salt mine is the major industry here. But beyond its scenic coastline, Pugwash holds another Cold War legacy. It is the site of a major peace movement, began by Pugwash-born American industrialist Cyrus Eaton.
Well, I think everybody in this town would know the name of Cyrus Eaton. I guess he's arguably the most famous person from Pugwash. Pugwash is known as the birthplace of the anti-nuclear movement. And the reason is that in 1957, my grandfather hosted a conference here at the lodge and also here in the village of 22 scientists from both sides of the Iron Curtain who came together at the request of Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein in order to talk about the dangers of nuclear weapons and to begin the effort to rid the world of nuclear weapons.
Held at this waterfront estate, known as the Thinker's Lodge, this meeting of minds might not have happened if a major disaster had not brought Cyrus Eaton back from America in the 1920s.
Well, Cyrus Eaton, of course, is born in Pugwash, always remained fond of Pugwash and the memories of his childhood here. And in 1928 and in 1929, there were two terrible fires right here in Pugwash. And my grandfather came back to Pugwash, saw the devastation, and said, "This is something I can do something about."
The conference, which made international headlines, would deliver a strong message to the world.
That original meeting in 1957 spawned something called the Pugwash movement. And there have been, since 1957, more than 350 meetings worldwide of concerned scientists, citizens, and thinkers, all dedicated to ridding the world of nuclear weapons.
In 1995, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to the Pugwash conferences for their efforts to diminish the part played by nuclear arms in international politics, and in the longer run, to eliminate such arms.
Pugwash itself has given back a lot to the world. I'm fond of telling people, in many places, Pugwash is more famous internationally than it is right here in Nova Scotia.
Now, the Thinker's Lodge is undergoing restoration. Grandson John Eaton hopes that someday this lodge will house conferences like the ones that happened here decades ago.
The legacy here, the hallowed ground, is that you can bring people together of diverse points of view to try to resolve some of the more pressing problems of our time. In 1957, the Cold War was the most pressing problem of the time and the danger of atomic war. But it seems that there are a lot of other world problems that still have to be tackled, and we're hoping that in the future some of those will be tackled right here at Thinker's Lodge.
The northern shore of Nova Scotia is a mix of scenic farmland, seaside cliffs, and incredible mudflats. Now, our aerial survey explores the endless beaches of the Northumberland Strait. This is cottage country. Generations of Nova Scotians call these coastlines home away from home. Drawn by the warm waters, immaculate scenery, and the marine wildlife all along this shore. Rising up from the coast is the ultimate in summer homes. Fox Harbor is a luxury community founded by Tim Hortons coffee magnate Ron Joyce, a multi-millionaire and native of the region. Complete with golf course, airstrip, resort, and spa, Fox Harbor draws elite guests from around the world. Here on Nova Scotia's remote North Shore. Heading across open water, Canada's smallest province, Prince Edward Island. Named after Prince Edward, the father of Queen Victoria, the island was the 7th province to join Canada in 1873. Here at Wood Island, a ferry has connected PEI to Nova Scotia for more than 70 years. Adjacent to Wood Island, Point Prim Lighthouse stands guard. More than 18 meters tall, it is PEI's oldest warning station, dating back to 1846. It is also the island's only round lighthouse, with unique brick walls 18 inches thick. More than 50 kilometers northwest, the passenger ferry's modern incarnation lies in the distance. The Confederation Bridge connects Borden Prince Edward Island with Cape Tormentine, New Brunswick.
So here we are at the Confederation Bridge, one of the longest bridges in the world, 13 kilometers long. It has spans that are 250 meters long, and each big span weighs 7,500 tons. And at the deck level, you are 40 meters off the water, and at the navigational span, you are 60 meters off the water. The bridge was built to fulfill a constitutional agreement between the federal government and PEI, and it replaces the ferry system.
This fixed link, narrowly approved by Prince Edward Islanders in a referendum more than 20 years ago, was designed for the often rough conditions of the Northumberland Strait. It was also designed for the world's rapidly changing ecological future.
As you can see today, it's very windy, and that was one of the particular things about this bridge. It had to be robust to not only withstand the ice, but also the weather conditions here. One of the things about this bridge is its nav span is 1 meter higher than most others, and that's because over its 100-year design life, we're expecting the water flows to rise, and therefore we built the bridge a bit higher, 1 meter higher.
Just 10 feet below the roadway, maintenance tunnels run all along the bridge's 44 piers, from coastline to coastline.
Now we're inside the Confederation Bridge at the tail end of the PI approach bridge and about to enter the main bridge. You can hear traffic above us. We're at an expansion joint, and this is why you hear some of the noise. And the bridge is a box girder type construction with 2 approach bridges and 1 main bridge. The 2 approach bridges are anchored, whereas the main bridge sits at the bottom by gravity. And obviously that brings the next question, does the bridge move? Yes, of course it does, and it has to, just like large buildings in the center of downtown.
It has been named one of the 20th century's great engineering accomplishments, and deep within the 478,000 cubic meters of concrete lies this structure's hidden ingredient.
The thrust of the matter really is the cables that hold all the pieces together. There's 12,000 kilometers of cables. And what does that mean? Well, the trek from PEI to Montreal is 1/10 of 1,200 kilometers, and it takes 11 hours to drive. So you have 12,000 kilometers worth of cables inside the bridge. That's a huge amount. So sometimes people say, is that a concrete bridge or a cable bridge? It's more like a cable bridge covered with concrete.
Construction began in 1993. It was a mammoth project that unbelievably was finished right on schedule less than 4 years later.
Upon arrival, there was absolutely nothing. We started from scratch, and the workforce started at 0, and with the subcontractors, there was about 6,000 people who crossed the gates here. So it was a big village all of a sudden for Borden to see all these people converge, and they came from all over the world. This is, I would say, in many ways, the Olympic team of bridge builders that came together.
From the northern coastline of Nova Scotia to the shores of Prince Edward Island, our aerial survey over eastern Canada continues. High above one of this nation's most historic cities. Charlottetown, named after Prince Edward's aunt, Queen Charlotte, is capital of the island. In 1864, this city would play a decisive role in North American history. As elder statesmen met here to discuss the formation of a new country, Canada. This historic meeting would give Charlottetown the motto, Birthplace of Confederation. Today, nearly 1/2 of Prince Edward Islanders make their homes here. Now, heading cross-country, the Hillsborough River lies far below, with the shores of the Gulf of St. Lawrence beckoning in the distance. With more than 30 golf courses lining the shores on this small island, PEI is considered to be a top golf destination and one of North America's favorite islands. Heading west along the North Shore, sandy beaches cover much of this 200-kilometer stretch of coast. Lined with cottages and immaculate summer homes, these beaches are an iconic symbol of the island, drawing nearly 1 million visitors each year. Further west, and the sands of Prince Edward Island National Park. It is a 60-kilometer stretch of island perimeter, protecting the dunes, wetlands, and salt marshes from human destruction and coastal erosion. Next, the Cove Head Lighthouse. Built on Cove Head Point, it continues to protect mariners on the site of one of the region's worst disasters. A 19th century gale that claimed more than 150 lives. Five kilometers to the west is the village of North Rustico. Set between rolling farmland and the sea, the village has been a fishing town since it was settled by Acadians, fleeing the British deportation of the 18th century. Now, the coastline rises as sandy beaches are replaced by spectacular red cliffs. And just a kilometer inland, another iconic symbol of the island. Green Gables is the setting for Lucy Maud Montgomery's fictional Anne of Green Gables. With this replica farmhouse drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. Back to the coast, and perhaps the island's most famous beach. The sands of Cavendish stretch 8 kilometers to the west, along the scenic shores of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Beyond, the red mud cliffs return, now even higher than before. Built on a sedimentary bedrock of soft sandstone, it is the high iron oxide content that gives the island this red coastal trademark. And it is the coastal erosion here that creates some of the world's most amazing seascapes. Continuing west, the island's trademark sand dunes stretch for miles along this northern shore. But these dunes are in danger, threatened by coastal erosion and human development. The real threat here is climate change. If future projections for tidal surges and rising sea levels are accurate, these protective dunes could be washed away forever. Heading inland, the fall colors of PEI's forested interior line the horizon. At its narrowest point, just a few miles separate the island's northern and southern coasts. Now, the inland waterways lead south on approach to Percival Bay and back to the Northumberland Strait. These sheltered, protected waters are home to some of Canada's finest shellfish. With an industry worth more than $70 million a year, PEI's oysters and mussels are a delicacy known all over the world. And on the ground, PEI's most famous symbol is visible just about everywhere. Each year, island farmers harvest more than 2.5 billion pounds of potatoes. For entrepreneur Julie Shore, the potato offered her a chance to add a new chapter to the agricultural story of this region.
So we're here in a community called Hermanville. It's on the eastern end of Prince Edward Island. And we have a small craft distillery, and we're making potato vodka. There's probably about anywhere from 16 to 30 pounds of potatoes in one bottle of our vodka. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. We start off early, and we start with 3 large crates, totaling 4,500 pounds of potatoes. Just like cooking potatoes at home, the smaller the pieces, the faster they cook. So we grind them up, we pump them into the cook kettle, and it still takes most of the day to cook. And then after that process is finished, we'll pump them through a heat exchanger and into the fermentation tanks. And those tanks, that's where we introduce our yeast. And yeast produces alcohol from the starches and the sugars. So once we have the alcohol, after a few days, we'll pump it into the still. And then we'll distill it up. And to make vodka, it has to be a neutral spirit. And to achieve neutrality, we really have to get that volume up as close to 95% by volume as possible. So almost 200 proof. We have to blend it then down to 80 proof or 40% alcohol, and then that's vodka.
For Shore, it has been a long journey. She opened Prince Edward Distillery nearly 5 years ago with little experience, just a unique family tradition.
I'm originally from a small town near Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And my partner and I came here on vacation in 1997, the year the bridge was built, and really was stunned by the beautiful colors and the wonders of Prince Edward Island. And we weren't back home too long before we kind of hit the fork in the road in life and said, where do we really want to be living and what do we really want to be doing? And it was Prince Edward Island. Four generations before me, the Shore family had a big distillery, good-sized distillery, but then Prohibition passed. That area of North Carolina that I'm from is the Bible Belt, so well, we couldn't get away with the distillery for long, so our family got into farming. I insist that if they had kept running the whiskey, we could have been the Kennedys of the South, but it just didn't work out that way.
Now, Shore's success with vodka and other spirits is being recognized on the mainland and throughout North America.
So we entered two competitions, Chicago Beverage Tasting Institute and San Francisco World Spirit Competition. And we beat a lot of the grain guys, Sky, F-Fon, Stoli, but the big one to beat was Chopin. And Chopin is globally known as the potato vodka out of Poland, and we beat them in both competitions. PI is definitely represented by the potato. Once we tell people where we're from, they say, oh, of course, you had to do potato vodka. PI is potato.
On approach to the coast, the West Cape Wind Farm sits on the horizon. Dozens of massive turbines, producing 92 megawatts of energy, rise up on this windy coastal strip of land. And further, the unique West Point Lighthouse. At more than 20 meters, it is the tallest square-shaped lighthouse in the province. Beyond West Point, scenic farmland and the villages and towns of PEI's Northumberland coast lead back to Confederation Bridge. It is a symbol of the past, marking the island's entry into Canada more than a century ago. And it is a symbol of the future, connecting the eastern Atlantic coastlines. Here on the edge of Canada.